Why don't you shut up and listen for a change? You really must be the vilest, rudest man in European politics. And you rant on, and the chair lets you get away with it because you're the former Prime Minister of Belgium.
You are very, very dangerous people indeed. Your obsession with creating this Euro state means that you're happy to destroy democracy. You appear to be happy for millions and millions of people to be unemployed and to be poor. Untold millions must suffer so that your Euro dream can continue. Those of us that have warned that unlimited numbers of people from different cultures without security checks would pose a threat to the cohesion of our societies were roundly abused for doing so. And what is happening to Greece now? Well, they're facing the next bailout in probably July of this year, and because you want to hold your project together, you are forcing them bit by bit to become a third world country. And all I can say, frankly, is shame on you. But look at your response to them. What they're being told, as their government's collapsing, is that it would be inappropriate for them to have a general election. In fact, Commissioner Wren here said they had to agree their budget first before they'd be allowed to have a general election. Just who the hell do you think you people are? But it's what happened, I think, in Cologne, where we saw the mob. Up to 1,000 young males in the street sexually assaulting and harassing women. It is, I think, in many ways one of the most disgraceful public order events that we've seen in modern day Europe. On the budget, you said there'd be no surrender of the UK rebate. Well, it seems to me that you've given away £7 billion of British taxpayers' money for nothing in return. And it's an irony, isn't it, that a project that was designed to contain German power has now given us a totally German-dominated Europe. Looking forward to Guy Verhofstadt, the Liberal Group leader, coming to the United Kingdom to take part in the Brexit debate. Your passionate defence of a United States of Europe and a European army is, I know, sincerely held, and I'm sure the Liberal Democrats will be delighted. In fact, what you've done is to open the door to young, male, economic migrants, many of whom, I have to say, behave in a rather aggressive manner, quite the opposite to what you would ever expect to see from any refugee. I don't think we can call the Juncker investment plan a rip-roaring success. Just have a look around at the empty seats this morning. And we saw, frankly, virtually a stampede, and we learn that 80% of those that are coming are not Syrian refugees. But just look around this chamber this morning. Just look at these faces. Look at the fear. Look at the anger. Poor old Barroso here looks like he's seen a ghost. Your only achievement is to open talks with Turkey, which is opposed by the vast majority of people in Europe and will lead to an even higher bill. This budget deal is game, set and match to President Chirac. No cheese-eating surrender monkey he. Unlike you, he stands up for the French national interest, not some bizarre notion of Europe, and he has outclassed and outplayed you at every turn. Yet there was an attempt by the police and the press to cover it all up, and even the suggestion from some German politicians that German young women should change their dress and their mode of behaviour in the street, which I thought was a total insult. And yet when that failure is met by objections from countries like Hungary, their opinions are crushed. You know, they're beginning to understand that the game is up, and yet in their desperation to preserve their dream, they want to remove any remaining traces of democracy from the system. Why should British taxpayers pay for new sewers in Budapest, for a new underground system in Warsaw, when our own public services are crumbling in London? There's even a name for these assaults. A name for these assaults in Egypt because they've now become commonplace and part of everyday life. And we ought to have the courage to send out a message to say these assaults must never be acceptable in any European town or city, and we'll do our damnedest to make sure that it never happens again. Good morning, Mr Van Rompuy. You've been in office for 1 year, and in that time the whole edifice is beginning to crumble. There's chaos. the money's running out. I should thank you. You should perhaps be the pin-up boy of the Eurosceptic movement.
I warned you, we all warned you, that it would not work for the Mediterranean countries. It could comfortably work for the optimal currency zone in the north, but no, through massive ambition and hubris, you ploughed on, and you allowed countries like Greece to join a currency that they were never fit for. And in what must count as perhaps the worst piece of public policy seen in modern Europe for half a century, when you compounded the already failing and flawed EU common asylum policy by saying to the whole world, please come to Europe. And then we came to New Year's Eve. Munich, the train station, the main station, closed down because of a terrorist threat, the intelligence coming from Syria and Iraq. The very same train station that in September people had stood at, holding up their placards, refugees welcome. That irony was not lost on me.
You know, your fanaticism is out in the open. You talked about the fact that it was a lie to believe that the nation state could exist in a 21st century globalised world. Well, that may be true in the case of Belgium, who haven't had a government for 6 months, but for the rest of us, right across every member state in this union, and perhaps this is why we see the fear in the faces, increasingly people are saying, we don't want that flag, we don't want the anthem, we don't want this political class, we want the whole thing consigned to the dustbin of history.
Well, there is, I think, a bright star on the horizon. It's called the British referendum. And given that none of you want to concede Britain the ability to take back control of our own borders, a Brexit now looks more likely than at any point in modern time, and I hope and pray that Britain voting to leave the European Union will be the beginning of the end of a project, however noble its original intentions, has gone rotten. When I was first elected here, the word immigration did not even appear on my election address. We did not use that word once when the first three of us got elected here. But now, as we've allowed much poorer countries to have the free movement of peoples, we see considerable anger in Britain and in many countries across the north of Europe. And yes, it's led to the rise of parties that some may consider to be deeply unpleasant. But that's what happens when you take control out of people's lives. And the other feature, President, that I've noticed here is the growth of what I can only describe as authoritarianism. You know, we actually saw the Prime Minister of Greece removed effectively by a coup d'etat, and we saw Mr. Berlusconi removed by a coup d'etat, and in both cases represented by appointees who were former directors of Goldman Sachs. So I think you've sowed the seeds of your own destruction. We have in 2 weeks' time what is to be the biggest event in the history of this project. It is the British referendum, and it's not just about whether Britain leaves the European Union, because if we make that choice, I'm confident many other countries will make that choice too. I did originally believe that we should leave because we were a square peg in a round hole. But when I saw what happened here in 2005, when the French and Dutch rejected the Constitution, and yet, sneakily, it was brought in through the back door as the Lisbon Treaty, I realised then that this is not just bad for Britain, it's bad for the whole of Europe, and I hope that on June the 23rd, it isn't just Independence Day for the United Kingdom. I hope it brings an end to this entire project, and in a few years' time, we can be sovereign, democratic nation states that work and trade together. I hope this is the last time I'll be speaking in this Parliament from a member state. Thank you, thank you, thank you very much. And I hope that we are going to leave this union on June the 23rd. And so I'm going out now. I may be some time.